Relic of the Pact is a lot easier to build around than people think. The thing is, this item has so many constraints that the builds actually become super simplified, and they take almost no brain power to make work once you start theory crafting. Just a heads up, in most of these clips I'm short about 40% DPS because I forgot to put Vortex back onto my left click after I was messing around with the gems, and Vortex triggers Life Tap and Bone Chill. So my setup features around 10 million DPS, mostly because of my lag. It has Overleech, it has roughly 8.5k Hybrid, some Elementalist options, Fortify, and Freeze. And Freeze is a huge defense when your single target is big enough to freeze T16 bosses. I had max block, but I decided to swap it out for more AoE. But it is, however, probably the most ping-intensive build in the game. And what I mean by that is, the rate at which the spell can be used is contingent on the server recognizing that you've reserved enough mana to release the skill before allowing a second channel to start. So you can test this. If I'm on 200 ping, my DPS literally drops to like 1 million, whereas on sub 20 ping, I'd be around 15 million DPS. So for those of you who don't know, this one gives you a spell called Blood Sacrament that reserves 3% of your health per tick before blowing up, when you either release the skill or reserve more than 100% of your HP. The more you reserve, the more damage you do. However, in my opinion, people keep making the cardinal mistake of trying to get multiple ticks before casting. And this doesn't actually increase your damage really, since you're still gated by cast speed, and it only really increases the functional AoE. So for my build, I set a reservation goal of 1 tick being more than 50%. And this allows you to scale HP instead of being forced to scale ES's defense with like Shavs, Ivory Tower, or Coruscating Elixir. And then I can use Petrified Blood. So there's two obvious ways to increase the reservation that come to mind. Both of them use Double Essence Worm, Supreme Ego, and Lock support gems, and these are Arrogance support at a relatively low level, Life Tap support, and a 140% mana support. So that's things like Cold Penetration, Infused Channeling. And this will take you to exactly 49.89 reservation. So the first way to move forward is to use a level 1 flat reservation aura like Vitality, Clarity, Precision with Arrogance support. And with that, you'll have roughly 99% life at all times maximum and only be able to channel the 49.9% cost Blood Sacrament once, right? Because the second time will push you over the 0, so it won't actually work. And this is good. But when you do this, it precludes the use of a strong aura, and instead you can probably throw in a Herald of Ash or Herald of Purity and scale either Pure Fizz or Fire Conversion. But I don't think this is good because you're losing value from Supreme Ego. The other way is to use Memory Vault Helmet, and then level your Arrogance to level 12, and this gives you an overall reservation cost of 50.01% life. And this allows the use of Hatred, and this becomes my primary form of damage scaling. My build then scales 3 main stats, the Fizz Convert to Cold and the Hatred effect, Maximum Life, which also increases your damage, and then Spell Crit, Crit Multi, that sort of thing. In addition to Essence Worm and Memory Vault, we're stuck now with Rim Sorrow to get half our conversion, a Hatred Watcher's Eye for conversion for up to 40%, and then anointing either Winter Spirit or using a Glorious Vanity Notable to achieve 100% conversion. I went with Winter Spirit. So I think the reason why a lot of people are struggling with this build is because they want to do this with AoE, right? With the full 99% reservation, but I think that's actually horrible because then you have to go with those bad defensive options. The 50%, it still has pretty good AoE and the damage is almost the exact same. The core uniques I'm using Relic of the Pact with Power Tonic Crit implicit, this was like 10 Chaos, 2 Essence Worms, a Rim Sorrow, and Memory Vault. Otherwise, all my other slots are completely flexible, so this shield doesn't really do shit for me other than give me resists, my amulet gives me some multi and the anointment. My chest is kind of cool, it does give me Hatred Aura effect and Frenzy Charge, but I have the bad version of the Hatred mod, so I could be getting like 10% more DPS. And then the Gravicious craft is really helpful as well. My boots help me cap out my attributes, so I need a ton of dex all the time. I do need some strength because I'm not using Headhunter anymore. And then I'm using the String of Servitude, and this gives me Hatred Aura effect, which actually goes up to 60%, which would be pretty big. But I got this one because it came with AoE, and it was only like 20 Chaos. Otherwise, you can look for, on other implicits, something like Multi during Flask effect or Max Life, and those are both much better than AoE in my opinion. My Flask setup is what it is. You can get rid of the Bottled Faith. It's one of 2 expensive items, this Bottled Faith and a Watcher's Eye. And if you get rid of these, you'll have somewhere around half the damage, which is fine. I think it's totally okay, and it will drop the cost from like 30 Exalts to 1 Exalt. And you also notice that I don't need a 6 link on this, so that's pretty great. My tree is really flexible as well, so you can get anything you want in Elementalist. I get this because I'm too lazy to get Element Immunity elsewhere, and then I love Heart of Destruction. I think the 60% AoE while mapping is such a big benefit, and the other nodes are good, but this is great. The Cluster Gel I'm running gives me my Spell Leech, and then some block, I guess. And then Pressure Points is great, but then this node, Overwhelming Malice, actually does give me Unholy Might almost all the time, because I'm casting like 10 times a second. And then it gives me something like about 5% DPS boost. It's not as big as I thought, but it's still quite good. I'm using this Curse medium cluster to give me Unnerve and just more damage. And then I have my Watcher's Eye somewhere. My Corrupted Soul, Glorious Vanity here, a Might of the Meek to scale all these life nodes, and then I'm pathing down here so I can get Supreme Ego, and you need to get this, right? Otherwise, Pain Attunement is the other node you definitely don't want to forget. It's such a good node. You're always on low life when you're casting, so yeah, don't forget that. And then everything else looks like basically life, some crit or crit multi, and that's about it. My gem setup is more flexible as well, although the weapon is locked, right? So the life tap, arrogance, and awaken cold penetration, this is pretty cheap. It's like 20 chaos or something. Actually, it was like 10 chaos when I bought it. My memory vault has my vortex life tap setup, so you really need this because it actually triggers life tap. So when you see it, look, that's my life tap triggering. If you don't have this as your setup, you won't trigger this and you won't get value out of this support gem. There's also a Bone Chill in here, which gives me more damage, and then Frost Shield. Frost Shield is great. You do stand still when you boss, or you're close to standing still. You're basically always within your Frost Shield, and it gives you base crit, which is really helpful. My shield charge setup is in here, a cast one damage setup is in here, and then I have 2 golems, 3 golems here, and a Vol Haste. Don't really know what to do with this slot. A Culling Strike, Wave of Conviction, Arcanist Brand. And this is big, right? Because Wave of Conviction, with as much Hatred or effect as I have, will actually apply Cold Exposure, which gets scaled by the Elementalist even further. And then lastly, I have a Flame Dash with Arcane Surge in here, and then a Skitterbots and Lighten. And if it were really up to me and I was looking to optimize anything, I would skip out the Skitterbots and I swap this with an aspect of the Spider. That about sums up probably what the build's made of. I think in whole, you probably should give it a try, and there's definitely other ways to scale this. I just think that this was the easiest way. It was relatively cheap, and I think it solves most of the problems that people are having with survivability, clear, and then having really, really solid boss damage.